You say you trust God. You declare it in prayer. You sing it in worship. You affirm it when someone asks about your faith. Yet your peace collapses the moment uncertainty appears. One unexpected message changes your mood. One delay unsettles your confidence. One unanswered prayer makes you question everything you thought was stable. This is not hypocrisy, it is something far more subtle. There is a hidden sin that does not look like rebellion. It hides behind sincerity. It disguises itself as emotional depth. It convinces you that being overwhelmed is proof that you care deeply. But slowly, without announcement, it weakens your faith from the inside. You do not wake up intending to doubt God. You wake up intending to survive the day. Yet your inner world becomes governed by waves of fear about the future, frustration over what you cannot change, and an exhausting need to predict outcomes before they happen. Your emotions begin to function as evidence. If you feel calm, you assume God is near. If you feel anxious, you assume something is wrong. If you feel strong, you believe you have faith. If you feel fragile, you conclude you are failing. The problem is not that you feel. The gospel of Jesus Christ never demands emotional numbness. Jesus wept. Paul the Apostle wrote about sorrow and anguish. John the Baptist faced isolation. The 12 disciples experienced confusion, fear, and doubt. Faith has never required the absence of emotion, but there is a line that once crossed begins to erode spiritual strength. When emotion becomes the lens through which you interpret reality, you quietly shift authority. When inner turbulence dictates your conclusions about God, you replace revelation with reaction. And that shift, though invisible, slowly drains your stability. This message will not promise to remove uncertainty from your life. It will not offer techniques to eliminate discomfort. It will confront something deeper, the place where control and trust collide within your mind. If you have felt like a prisoner of your own reactions, if your faith feels sincere yet fragile, what you are about to hear will not condemn you. It will expose what has been quietly weakening you and show you why your exhaustion may be coming from fighting battles that were never yours to command. And before we name the hidden sin directly, you must first recognize its pattern in your daily life. The pattern you have normalized. Most people believe their greatest spiritual struggle is external pressure, difficult circumstances, uncertain outcomes, other people's decisions. But the real drain often begins internally, in a pattern so common that it feels normal. You wake up and immediately scan for potential threats to your peace. You replay past conversations, searching for hidden meanings. You imagine possible futures and prepare emotionally for disasters that have not happened. When something shifts outside your expectations, your inner stability shifts with it. Your mood becomes tied to variables you do not control. You tell yourself this is responsibility. You call it being realistic. You assume this constant mental rehearsal is wisdom. Yet what is actually happening is subtler. You're attempting to manage what was never assigned to you. Paul the Apostle demonstrated something radically different. Imprisoned, uncertain about his future. Misunderstood by many, he did not deny reality. He distinguished between what he could govern and what he could not. His chains did not dictate his interpretation. His discomfort did not define God's faithfulness. He mastered his response even when he could not master his environment. Contrast that with your internal pattern. When circumstances tighten, your thoughts accelerate. When outcomes are unclear, your emotions intensify. Instead of separating what belongs to your responsibility from what belongs to God's sovereignty, everything merges into one overwhelming weight. This is where the hidden sin begins to take form, not in dramatic rebellion, but in misplaced authority. And if you do not learn to identify that authority shift, you will continue strengthening the very pattern that is weakening your faith. 2. The hidden sin named clearly. The hidden sin that weakens your faith without you realizing it is emotional sovereignty. It is the quiet decision to allow your emotional state to determine your perception of truth. It is the habit of treating feelings as final authority rather than as internal signals that require examination. It is not emotion itself that corrupts stability. It is enthroning emotion. Emotional sovereignty sounds harmless because it feels honest. You say you are simply being authentic. You say you are just acknowledging what is happening inside you. Yet authenticity without discipline becomes self-rule. And self-rule, when placed above divine order, subtly removes God from his rightful place. Consider the gospel of Jesus Christ in Gethsemane. Jesus did not deny distress. He acknowledged sorrow with full awareness, but he did not allow anguish to dictate obedience. He distinguished between what he felt and what he chose. He submitted his will without suppressing his humanity. Emotion was present, but it was not sovereign. Now examine your own internal structure. When anxiety rises, do you question the narrative your mind is creating, or do you immediately accept it as truth? When uncertainty appears, do you pause and separate facts from interpretation, or do you merge them into one emotional conclusion? When your mood darkens, do you evaluate it through reason shaped by faith, or do you allow it to redefine your view of God's involvement in your life? Emotional sovereignty makes faith fragile because it ties spiritual conviction to psychological weather. If the inner climate is calm, belief feels strong. If the inner climate is turbulent, belief feels threatened. Over time, this pattern trains you to seek emotional relief instead of disciplined trust. John the Baptist understood limitation. He accepted decrease without equating it to abandonment. Paul the Apostle endured opposition without allowing discouragement to dictate doctrine. The 12 disciples learned, often painfully, that feeling fear did not justify abandoning truth. Their growth required a shift from reaction to reason. The moment emotion becomes your interpreter, you unconsciously attempt to control reality by controlling how it feels. And when you fail to stabilize the feeling, you conclude that something is spiritually wrong. That conclusion is not humility, it is misdirected authority. You were never meant to eliminate emotion, you were meant to govern it. And the difference between those two is the difference between unstable faith and resilient conviction. In the next part, we will examine why this misplaced authority drains your strength and how the confusion between control and surrender intensifies the very anxiety you are trying to escape. 3. Why it drains your strength. Emotional sovereignty does not destroy faith instantly. It erodes it gradually by exhausting your internal resources. When you attempt to control outcomes through emotional management, you engage in a battle that has no finish line. You monitor your feelings constantly. You adjust your thoughts to reduce discomfort. You seek reassurance to stabilize your mood. Yet stability never lasts because the external world remains unpredictable. This creates a silent cycle. Circumstances shift. Emotion reacts. You interpret the reaction as spiritual evidence. You attempt to correct the feeling instead of examining the belief beneath it. The cycle repeats. Over time, your faith becomes reactive rather than grounded. Paul the Apostle endured imprisonment, public criticism, and uncertainty about survival. Yet his letters reveal structured reasoning, not emotional volatility. He separated circumstance from identity. He understood that while he could not command events, he could command interpretation. That distinction preserved his strength. Without that distinction, exhaustion becomes inevitable. If you believe your peace depends on securing outcomes, you will chase control endlessly. If you assume that emotional calm equals divine approval, you will panic whenever discomfort appears. Your nervous system becomes the barometer of your theology. The gospel of Jesus Christ presents a different model. Christ did not equate distress with divine absence. He acted in alignment with purpose even when emotion resisted the path ahead. His obedience was anchored in reason illuminated by truth, not in fluctuating sensation. The 12 disciples struggled precisely because they misinterpreted events through fear. Storms convinced them they would perish. Delay convinced them they were abandoned. Each time their emotional conclusion distorted their perception. Only when they learned to recalibrate interpretation did their faith mature. When you confuse control with responsibility, you accept burdens that were never assigned to you. Responsibility belongs to your response, your discipline of thought, your obedience. Control over outcomes belongs elsewhere. When you attempt to absorb both, your mind fractures under the weight. This is why you feel tired even when nothing dramatic has happened. You are fighting for mastery over what cannot be mastered. And until you understand the boundary between what is yours and what is not, your strength will continue to drain. In the next part, we will define that boundary clearly and explore how accepting limitation becomes the foundation of stable faith rather than a sign of weakness. 4. The boundary between control and surrender. Your exhaustion is not coming from life itself. It is coming from crossing a boundary that was never meant to be crossed. There is a line between stewardship and sovereignty. When that line is clear, faith becomes steady. When that line is blurred, anxiety multiplies. What belongs to you is your judgment, your response, your discipline of thought, your obedience in the present moment. What does not belong to you is timing, outcomes, other people's choices, and the unfolding of events beyond your reach. This distinction is not philosophical abstraction. It is spiritual architecture. Paul the Apostle understood this architecture deeply. He could not control the verdict of courts, the loyalty of companions, or the length of his imprisonment, but he governed his interpretation. He chose gratitude. He chose endurance. He chose clarity. That was not emotional suppression. It was reason aligned with truth. The gospel of Jesus Christ reveals the same structure. Christ accepted the cup before him without demanding a different path. Acceptance did not weaken him. It stabilized him. By surrendering what was not his to alter, he preserved strength for what was his to accomplish. When you refuse limitation, you attempt to occupy a role that belongs to God alone. This is where emotional sovereignty becomes theological error. Each time you insist on securing certainty, predicting outcomes, or managing the uncontrollable, you subtly declare that peace depends on your management rather than divine order. Acceptance is often misunderstood as passivity. In reality, it is disciplined realism. It is the courage to say, I will act fully where I have authority, and I will release fully where I do not. That release is not resignation. It is alignment. John the Baptist accepted decrease without interpreting it as failure. The 12 disciples matured when they stopped demanding immediate clarity and began trusting process over preference. Their growth required surrender of imagined control. When this boundary becomes clear in your mind, something shifts. Anxiety loses part of its fuel. Emotional storms no longer dictate your theology. You begin to experience a steadier form of faith, not because circumstances improve, but because your perception stabilizes. In the next part, we will translate this boundary into practical internal recalibration so that this insight becomes lived discipline rather than temporary inspiration. 5. Internal recalibration. Insight without practice changes nothing. If you understand the boundary between control and surrender, but do not train your mind to respect it, emotional sovereignty will quietly return. Recalibration begins the moment emotion rises. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause and ask a disciplined question. What part of this situation is truly mine to govern? This interrupts the automatic merger between feeling and conclusion. It creates space between stimulus and interpretation. The next movement is separation. Separate facts from the story your mind is constructing. A delayed response is a fact. The assumption of rejection is interpretation. An uncertain future is a fact. The prediction of disaster is interpretation. Paul the Apostle repeatedly demonstrated this separation. He acknowledged hardship without allowing imagination to define outcome. His letters reflect reason under pressure, not denial of reality. Then comes governance. You do not silence emotion, you subject it to examination. If fear appears, you evaluate its claim. Is it warning you about a real responsibility, or is it demanding control over what belongs to God? This is where philosophy and faith converge. The discipline of thought becomes an act of obedience. The gospel of Jesus Christ shows this mental strength clearly. Christ did not allow sorrow to distort purpose. He aligned his will with truth despite emotional weight. That alignment is available to you, not as mystical intensity but as daily structure. You train your perception by refusing to draw theological conclusions from temporary feelings. Peace is not proof of divine approval. Discomfort is not proof of divine absence. Stability grows when you anchor conviction in reason illuminated by Scripture rather than in internal climate. As this recalibration becomes consistent, something changes quietly. You stop chasing emotional control. You start stewarding response. Anxiety loses authority because it no longer dictates meaning. Faith strengthens because it is no longer tied to mood. What remains now is to understand the transformation that unfolds when this discipline becomes habitual, and how a quieter mind becomes the evidence of mature trust. 6. The quiet transformation. When discipline replaces reaction, transformation does not arrive loudly. It unfolds with quiet strength. You begin to notice that situations which once destabilized you no longer carry the same power. The future remains uncertain, but it no longer feels threatening in the same way. Delays no longer provoke panic. Silence no longer forces negative conclusions. Your inner world stops mirroring every external shift. This is not emotional numbness, it is ordered perception. Faith matures when it is no longer dependent on emotional confirmation. Paul the Apostle did not measure God's faithfulness by comfort. He measured it by truth. That is why he could endure instability without internal collapse. His strength came from alignment, not from ideal circumstances. The gospel of Jesus Christ reveals this maturity in its purest form. Christ remained steady before accusation, betrayal, and suffering. Not because he felt no weight, but because his perception was anchored in purpose. When purpose governs perception, chaos loses authority. As you practice separating control from surrender, something stabilizes at the core of your identity. You stop asking, "How do I feel about this moment?" and begin asking, "What is required of me in this moment?" That shift alone recalibrates your entire internal structure. You will still experience emotion. You will still face uncertainty, but your faith will no longer fluctuate with every internal wave. You will respond with clarity instead of reflex. You will act with intention instead of fear. This is the quiet fruit of relinquishing emotional sovereignty. A steadier heart, a clearer mind, a resilience that does not depend on perfect outcomes. The hidden sin weakens faith because it dethrones reason and enthrones reaction. When that order is restored, faith strengthens without spectacle. Stability becomes evidence of trust. 7. Closing alignment. Return to the question that opened this journey. If your peace disappears when circumstances change, what has truly been holding it in place? Now the answer is clearer. It was not God who moved. It was your perception that shifted. Each time emotion assumed authority, your faith became vulnerable to internal weather. Each time you attempted to control what was never assigned to you, you weakened the very trust you were trying to protect. The hidden sin was never loud rebellion. It was the quiet enthronement of feeling above disciplined thought. It was the assumption that intensity equals truth. It was the belief that stability must come from securing outcomes rather than governing response. You now understand the boundary. You recognize what belongs to you and what does not. You see that acceptance is not surrendering effort, but surrendering illusion. You see that faith is not emotional certainty, but rational alignment with truth revealed through the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul the Apostle endured because he mastered interpretation. John the Baptist remained firm because he accepted limitation. The 12 disciples matured when they learned to trust beyond immediate sensation. Their strength was not emotional absence. It was ordered perception. If you apply what you have heard, your circumstances may remain complex. The future may remain uncertain, but your internal structure will not be as fragile. You will respond with clarity where you once reacted with fear. You will act where you have authority and release where you do not. Faith strengthens when control is relinquished and responsibility is embraced. Peace stabilizes when perception is disciplined, and when emotional sovereignty is replaced with reason shaped by truth, you no longer feel like a prisoner of your own mind. The transformation is not dramatic, it is steady. And that steadiness is the evidence that your faith is no longer governed by chaos, but anchored in understanding.